I've been on guard against him for 10 years and also hated him for 10 years. Until just before I died. The man who used to be gloomy and aloof held me in his arms and sobbed uncontrollably. It was as if he had lost everything in an instant. Please. Open your eyes and look at me. Please. Only then did I realize how much he loved me. If I could do it all over again, I would never let him down. What? Are you disappointed to see it's me? Ting Man sat in the corner. The dim light fell on his face. It made me feel a bit dazed. Just a moment ago, he had held me in his arms and begged me desperately not to die. I suddenly realized that I seemed to have been reborn. Reborn 5 years ago. On the night I ran away from my wedding. His voice was cold and firm. ZHI King from the ZHI King family. With me. You're still thinking of someone else. Aren't you? Even though he was asking me a question. The moment he saw me frown, he extinguished the cigarette between his fingertips. Ting Man would smoke whenever he was annoyed. And I hated the smell of cigarettes. Consequently, my dislike for him grew even deeper. But later I learned that he had post-traumatic stress disorder. Smoking was just his way of relieving it. Seeing me remain silent, Ting Man walked up to me. There was suppressed anger in his eyes. On the day of the wedding, the bride ran away with someone else. I completely made him a laughingstock. Ting Man grabbed my chin forcefully. The gloomy and dark face in front of me overlapped with the sorrowful and desperate him from my previous life. Tears quickly welled up in my eyes. His gaze focused, and his tone involuntarily softened. Who are you thinking about? I blurted out, you. Ting Man was taken aback and instinctively released his hand. I rubbed against his palm and let out a comfortable sigh. I'm really thinking about you. He was like being burned and quickly withdrew his hand. Sweet words. His tone was stiff. Ting Man turned around and left, but the tips of his ears turned red. I deliberately sniffed. As I expected, he paused in his steps. After a moment, he tilted his head slightly. But the warning words came out of his mouth right away. I will definitely look into the matter of you. I advise you not to have any sneaky thoughts. He thought that my showing kindness to him was all because of you. That's right. I used to dislike him so much. How could I suddenly be nice to him? Moreover, he was quite suspicious. There was still a long way to go if I wanted to win his heart. Ting Man left the room. The moment he closed the door, I saw him staring at his palm with an unreadable expression. Ting Man was an adopted son of my family. Gloomy and aloof. When he first came to my family, I really liked him. He had an overly beautiful face. But unfortunately, that face was always extremely cold. It was the same with me. Grandpa asked me to be more tolerant of him. He said that Ting Man had no parents and was very pitiful. But I was spoiled and had been doted on by everyone since I was a child. And I couldn't stand the slightest cold look. His background instead became a sharp blade for me to hurt him. I remember it was Ting Man's birthday. I was busy preparing a lot of surprises for him and even invited his classmates. However, when Ting Man took off the ribbon covering his eyes and saw the scene in front of him clearly, he just said expressionlessly, instead of doing such a boring thing. You might as well practice the piano for a while to make Grandpa happy. Although usually, I always tried to please him despite his cold attitude. But he had never spoken to me like that in front of so many people. Someone whispered, look. The eldest young lady of the ZHI King family is also being a lapdog. Children's words are the most hurtful. I couldn't save face. So I kicked over the flower pot and pointed at Ting Man's nose and cursed. Who do you think you are? How dare you boss me around? Don't you just want to please my grandpa? I'm telling you. I can make you leave with just a word. I can make you become a vagrant. At that time, I was still young and couldn't understand the feeling of living under someone else's roof at all. Although Grandpa treated him very well. After all, it wasn't his own home. So Ting Man always demanded that he do his best so that Grandpa would be happy. Furthermore, he was naturally cold. His parents died early. And no one had ever taught him to consider other people's feelings. If he didn't like something, he just didn't like it. He didn't like excitement and also didn't like these irrelevant classmates. He was just telling the truth. But at that time, I was only immersed in the anger of my sincere feelings being wasted. I had never thought from his perspective. Hearing my words, Ting Man looked shocked. He seemed very surprised at why I would say such things to hurt him. As soon as I said those words, I regretted it. In fact, I really liked Ting Man. Although he didn't pay much attention to me. But having an elder brother of a similar age at home wouldn't be so boring. But I couldn't say these words. I was so spoiled that I didn't know how to apologize. Just like that, the relationship between us grew more and more distant. Until I met you. You was different from others. He could always quickly sense my little thoughts and make me happy. I thought that he and I were in love with each other. But Grandpa said that I already had an engagement with Ting Man. I didn't want to. What era is this? Arranged marriages are still in vogue? Grandpa tried to persuade me. You is not a good person. I have to say that the old man really had a sharp eye. But at that time, I simply didn't believe it. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ting Man's overly cold face. And I became even angrier. Marry? It's more like forcing someone to do something. Both of us don't want to. So what's the point of getting married? Just to make you happy. Grandpa? Suddenly, I'm willing. When he said this, Ting Man had a calm expression. Neither happy nor sad. It seemed that the person who was going to marry me wasn't him. At that time, I thought he was doing it to repay Grandpa for raising him. I don't know why, but I was filled with anger. You're just coveting my family's property. Being a son-in-law of the ZHI King family. You actually feel at ease with it. Grandpa angrily rebuked, ZHI King of the ZHI King family. How can you talk like that? Grandpa, who had always doted on me in the past, scolded me for an outsider. I felt wronged, but I couldn't say anything to show weakness. I just stared at Ting Man resentfully. Tears welled up in my eyes. Meeting my resentful gaze, Ting Man frowned, which was rare for him. He opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something. He could never say anything nice. He was just an emotionless monster. I wiped away my tears and didn't give him a chance to speak. Do whatever you like. It has nothing to do with me. It can be said that I brought about my own tragic ending later. Ting Man's threat to me wasn't false. Afraid that I would mess things up, he really locked me at home for several days. I act without considering the consequences. But Ting Man needs to think ahead. We represent the face of the ZHI King family. For this wedding, Grandpa invited all the celebrities in the city. But I messed it up. At that time, you said he would come to snatch the bride. And I readily agreed. He had someone crash Ting Man's wedding car and then took me away from the ZHI King family. When Ting Man arrived, he only saw an empty room. Grandpa was so angry that he fainted and was taken to the hospital. And Ting Man had to run back and forth, not only cleaning up the mess I made but also speaking well of me in front of Grandpa. Of course, I was also caught back by him. As for you, he was suspected of abduction and kidnapping and taken to the police station by Ting Man. I slapped my head. How could I be so stupid? How could I be so stupid? Could I really have a good life with a Phoenix man, a man from a poor background who rises to a better position through marriage or other means? Although Ting Man was an adopted son, his uncle was rich. Over the years, he had been fighting with his uncle, aiming to take back what belonged to him. And in my previous life, I knew nothing and was only focused on causing trouble. When Ting Man entered the room, I was rolling around on the bed, regretting what I had done. He saw my messy hair and slightly red and swollen eyes and snorted coldly. Are you really that worried about him? He misunderstood me again. I felt so wrong that I wished I could tell him everything and cry in his arms. But at this time, Ting Man had already been deeply hurt by me. He didn't believe anything. He would only think that I was making up stories in order to escape again. I sat down obediently and asked him, "Why haven't you come to see me these days?" "Busy." He was concise. And there was obvious tiredness on his face. I became even more annoyed. It was all my fault. But no matter how busy you are, you still have to go home and sleep. I'm right next door to you. And you didn't even come to see me? Ting Man frowned, seemingly puzzled by my words. In the past, I used to be annoyed whenever I saw him. In my previous life, when he locked me up, I would throw things as soon as he came in. There was a scar on his forehead, which I caused at that time. In this life, I won't let such a thing happen. Ting Man remained silent for a long time. Well, I was being unreasonable again. Some habits really can't be changed in a short time. I lost my spirit. Forget it. If you're tired, then. Ting Man suddenly moved and walked in front of me. The words "go and rest first" got stuck in my throat. He took out a box from his pocket, a birthday gift. My birthday was still a few days away. Ting Man had always been like this, being meticulous about etiquette. I studied abroad for 3 years. And he never came to see me once. Every time on my birthday, only his gift would arrive on time. It was very perfunctory. I took the box. Only then did I notice that his hands were scarred. "How did you get these?" Ting Man's expression was indifferent. "It's none of your business." He was still angry. Most of the words he said were not pleasant. "What are you trying to find out from me? Is you okay?" "Zhi King of the Zhi King family." "I won't tell you. Don't waste your time." I lowered my eyes. How could I tell him that I wasn't worried about you at all? I even wished he were dead. But it would be really abrupt to tell Ting Man that I cared about him or liked him now. But matters of the heart are really strange. Why didn't I realize that I liked Ting Man before? I used to think that my excessive attention to Ting Man was because I disliked him, and was afraid that he would steal Grandpa's love for me. But it turned out not to be the case. What I hated the most was his face that never smiled at me. Seeing me remain silent, Ting Man frowned even deeper. He pursed his lips. As if in compromise, "You is fine. These scars weren't from hitting him." "Oh." I replied unhappily and opened the velvet box. It was a very beautiful necklace with purple and blue sapphires. Even though I had seen a lot of treasures, I couldn't help but be amazed. Ting Man raised his leg and was about to leave. Wouldn't he even ask if I liked it? He never said anything. He kept everything in his heart. I couldn't even feel his love. Otherwise, how could we have missed each other for so many years? I hate that he's such a blockhead. "You can't buy me off with this piece of junk stone." Ting Man's eyes darkened, and his arm hanging by his side tightened. I still felt can be translated as felt sorry for him, or felt compassion for him, depending on the context. Here it means I felt sorry for him in this situation. This temper came out of nowhere and I simply couldn't hold it back. I sat in front of the dressing mirror and said softly, "It looks quite pretty. Put it on me and let me have a look." Ting Man did as I said. His slightly rough fingertips glided across my skin, and I couldn't help but shudder. "It tickles." Ting Man in the mirror coughed softly. His gaze shifted away from the back of my neck. "I've also prepared some matching dresses. I'll have someone bring them for you to choose later. I'll hold a banquet for your birthday." I knew his intention. I had already messed up the wedding banquet. For the sake of the face of the Zhi King family. He made up a lie, saying that I had been taken away by kidnappers. Holding this grand banquet this time was to dispel some of the rumors and tell everyone that our relationship was very good. Ting Man coldly warned me again. "Don't be in a bad mood this time. I won't let you go." Grandpa was still angry and refused to see me. On the day of my birthday banquet, I finally saw him. I immediately greeted him and called out Grandpa obediently. My eyes were sore. In my previous life, Grandpa also suffered because of me. This time, I would never let such a thing happen again. Never. Grandpa just gave a hema, and then started talking to Ting Man. I silently held back my tears. When Ting Man went to greet the guests, I finally got a chance to talk to him alone. "Grandpa, I've thought it through. Ting Man is quite nice. And I'll be with him well in the future." He gave me a fierce look. "What kind of trick are you playing this time?" Even my own grandpa didn't believe that I had changed my mind so quickly. Not to mention Ting Man. "I went with you just to make Ting Man angry. Look at his wooden appearance. Does he seem to like me?" I pouted. If he hadn't performed decently this time, I wouldn't even bother with him. Grandpa then began to believe my words a bit. "You know, for some things, you don't just look at them with your eyes, but you have to feel them with your heart. Sweet words can coax you away. But why can't you see the people who make silent efforts?" I acted quick to this lie. Grandpa. Stop nagging me. Ting Man is still angry and doesn't want to share a room with me. As expected of my grandpa. He understood immediately. All right. Grandpa will go home tonight. More and more people came to the banquet. And it was inevitable to put on an act. Ting Man stood beside me. The closest distance between us was just that my skirt touched his straight suit pants. With this, they still wanted to dispel the rumors and say that we were deeply in love. Sigh. So stupid. I put my arm around his. Ting Man stiffened severely. Turned his head to look at me. And his eyes were full of confusion. I leaned close to his ear and said, "Put your arm around my waist." In the eyes of others, it seemed that the newlywed couple was whispering sweet nothings. The guest smiled and said, "You two have such a good relationship." I nodded shyly and said, "My waist still hurts now." The guest smiled suggestively. Ting Man looked at me in surprise. I gritted my teeth and said, "Can't you even pretend?" Wasn't he the best at pretending to be indifferent? No. Why couldn't he even pretend to be calm? Ting Man finally did as I said. There was a patch of exposed skin on my lower back. The warmth from his arm kept coming. It was very warm. I turned my head and saw that the tips of his ears were completely red. He was really innocent. When the banquet was in full swing, I saw Shun. She came at the right time. I was just about to find someone to ask what Ting Man liked. To pursue my husband, I had to act coquettously and cater to his preferences. They had a good relationship in the previous life. I had secretly been jealous of Shun several times. It was clearly sadness and jealousy. But I just blurted out hurtful and harsh words. "You're just a dog of my Sai King family. After marrying me, you still dare to have a good time outside. Don't you?" Ting Man's face turned ugly. At first, he chose to ignore me and walked away without saying a word. Later, he frowned and said coldly, "Shun and I are just friends. Don't tarnish her reputation." Hearing such words, I got even angrier. Right in front of me, he actually dared to defend another woman. That's how we were. Neither of us was willing to back down. Our two hearts drifted further and further apart. In the end, we ended up getting a divorce. Later, I found out that Shun actually already had someone she liked. She and Ting Man were friends. I greeted her first. After chatting casually for a few words, I got straight to the point. "Is there anything that Ting Man particularly likes? Like some kind of food? Or something to play with? Or something to read?" Shun raised an eyebrow. "You and he are childhood sweethearts. Do you still need to ask me?" I fell silent. It seemed that Ting Man didn't have anything he particularly liked. Even if he did, he wouldn't show it easily. Moreover, I had never paid attention to it before. I stared at Shun. I remembered that Ting Man seemed to admire her very much. He admired her calmness, confidence, generosity, and elegance. Otherwise, should I learn from her? Shun frowned. "Why are you staring at me? Ting Man doesn't like me." Was my thought that obvious? Just be yourself. Some people don't know how lucky they are. She looked at the gemstone necklace around my neck. "This was given to you by Ting Man, right? I can tell at a glance." She leaned closer to me. She was taller than me, so she had to lean slightly forward to observe the necklace up close. "He made it himself. He went to my studio many times." "Ah. Right. She was a jewelry designer." She sneered. "He still wouldn't show it to me. And he wouldn't tell me why I asked him. Actually, I know. He just wanted you to be the first person to see it." This man's little thoughts are quite romantic. So, the wound on his hand was because of making this necklace? No wonder he looked sad when I broke the stone. But in my previous life, I knew nothing about it. If I hadn't shown friendliness to Shun this time, she wouldn't have given me this hint. Seeing my shocked expression, she patted my shoulder. "Sister will tell you another secret. All the gifts you received from him were made by his own hands. Each one was filled with his thoughts and love. He's a big CEO. And he still has time for these things. I'm afraid he used all his free time to discover new skills and make things for you, right?" After saying that, she left. I was left standing there. unable to come back to my senses for a long time. On the way home, I didn't say a word. It turned out that Ting Man had done so much for me. But I had never noticed it. After getting out of the car, Grandpa said, "You must be tired today. You two should go and rest early." His eyes were bright. The butler bowed. "Please go and rest. Young master and young lady. You should change your words. Call them young master and young madam." Grandpa was deliberately playing a double act here. Ting Man had no choice but to pull me upstairs and enter the room. As soon as the door was closed, it was locked from the outside. Ting Man and I looked at each other in surprise. His handsome face turned red. "I don't have to rest. Look at how capable you think you are." I took my clothes and went in to take a shower. When I came out, Ting Man was sitting as far away from the bathroom as possible. He had his back to me, as if he was reflecting on his mistakes. This was the first time I saw him so nervous. And there was a hint of amusement in my voice. "I'm done. You can go and take a shower now. You don't have my clothes here. You want to lie on my bed without taking a shower?" I don't know what he thought of, but a suspicious blush appeared on his face. "I'll sleep on the floor. There's no extra quilt." It looked like I was going to force an innocent man. I added, "There's a bath towel in the bathroom." When Ting Man came out, he really only had a bath towel wrapped around his lower body. His figure was well proportioned, and his lines were distinct. The sight was quite good. I couldn't help but swallow. The sound of my swallowing was too obvious. I coughed softly and lowered my head to pretend to play with my phone. He saw my wet hair and frowned. "Why didn't you dry it?" I said obediently. "I was waiting for you." Hearing this, he took the hair dryer and helped me dry my hair. Actually, Ting Man indulges me quite a lot. But I'm the kind of person who takes advantage of others' kindness. So he always warns me fiercely. Afraid that I'll mess things up again. His fingers inserted into the top of my head and separated a few strands of wet hair. It tickled a lot. I deliberately said something ambiguous. "You have my scent on you." He paused. "Yeah. The body wash. TSK, HSK. So unromantic." After drying my hair, I lay down and even patted the empty space beside me. "Come on. We're a legal couple. It's legal, you know? Don't be so coy. Are you still a man or not?" The method of goading worked quite well. I talked about the interesting things that happened when we were kids. Actually, we had a long and happy time together. Ting Man, I wish we could go back to our childhood. I would definitely treat him well. We wouldn't have missed so many years. Ting Man didn't say a word. I've been talking for so long. Why don't you react at all? Are you still a man or not? It seemed that Ting Man couldn't stand my nagging. He covered my mouth and said, "Go to sleep. I'm tired." I gently kissed the palm of his hand. He quickly moved his hand away and snapped, "What are you doing?" He looked shocked and angry, as if he had been offended. But if you listen carefully, you could find the tremor in his voice. He was actually nervous. I blinked my eyes. Doing what a couple should do. I was wrong that day. I should make up a wedding night for you. Right? I kept talking to myself. I didn't notice at all that Ting Man's brows had been furrowed deeply. "What should we do on the wedding night?" Suddenly, he lost control and turned over on top of me. Only then did I realize that his face looked ugly. And there was a hint of anger in his eyes. "For you, hadn't fulfilled land sigh. You can actually go this far? What on earth?" This man was really awkward. I pushed him angrily. He didn't move at all. "Can you stop mentioning him all the time? Do I look like I like him? If I really liked him, I would have had so many chances to run away these days. Do you really think you can keep me locked up? I learned how to escape through the window when I was in junior high school." He clearly knew that. "Ting Man, I really think we can give it a try. The prerequisite is that you smile at me more often." I held his face in my hands, and my fingertips glided across his eyebrows and eyes. "Smile, and you'll look 10 years younger." He actually smiled. His usually sharp and gloomy eyebrows and eyes suddenly softened. There seemed to be a pool of spring water in his eyes. I admit that I was stunned. I couldn't help but swallow. But soon, let out a low sigh. Ting Man restrained his smile and turned over and got out of bed. He walked to his clothes. Took out a cigarette box. As if remembering something, he threw the cigarette box aside irritably. I stared at the ceiling, feeling a bit annoyed. It seemed that I had messed things up again. But after a while, Ting Man lay down beside me again. Go to sleep. His voice was a bit hoarse. I couldn't fall asleep. My heart was beating very fast. On the contrary, Ting Man was probably really tired during this period. Soon, went out a low sigh. His breathing became long and steady. I traced his eyebrows and eyes. I've been looking at this face for more than 10 years. Yet I still don't feel tired of it. Ting Man let out a sigh and caught my mischievous hand. If you're not going to sleep, what do you want to do? The end of his sentence rose in tone. It made my heart go all soft. There was a moment of silence in the air. I licked my lips. But Ting Man let go of me and said, "Go to sleep." No way. Glancing at the cigarette pack that had been tossed aside, I tried to find something to talk about. Why do you smoke? Smoking is not a good habit. Ting Man fell silent again. Just when I thought he had fallen asleep, he suddenly spoke. My mother had the habit of smoking. There was a faint smell of cigarettes on her. I found that wrapping myself in the smoke would make me calm down. When he said this, his emotions didn't fluctuate much. It was as if he was just talking about something very ordinary. But I suddenly remembered that in my previous life, Grandpa had lied to me. He only said that Ting Man's parents had died in a car accident. But it was only a long time later that I learned that Ting Man had also been in that car. He was protected under his mother's body and thus survived. I finally understood that Ting Man smoked just to seek a sense of security, imitating that he was still in his mother's embrace. My eyes grew hot. I didn't know what to say. In the end, I turned sideways and hugged him in my arms. Like coaxing a child, I said, "It's all in the past. Everything will be okay. I will always be by your side." Ting Man raised his head and stared blankly at me. In the moonlight, his eyes were deep and filled with an unnamed emotion. He was always like this, not showing his happiness or anger on his face. And I was pampered and grew up willfully since I was a child. I couldn't even read people's expressions. So when I was with him, I could never figure out if he was happy or what he was really thinking. It was very frustrating. Over time, I didn't like playing with him anymore. But at this moment, my heart was pounding wildly under his gaze. And I couldn't help covering his eyes. In fact, Ting Man doesn't like to be in a passive position. Having his eyes covered is equivalent to giving me initiative to others. But he didn't pull my hand away. He just said, "You're rarely this gentle with me." My face grew hot. "Can't I be like this to you from now on? Are you asking for it? Do you only feel comfortable when I'm mean to you?" He suddenly laughed. His eyebrows and eyes curved, like the moon in the sky. "No. You're fine the way you are. Just be yourself." At this moment, I suddenly thought of Schwann's words. It's true that I didn't know how lucky I was when I was in a fortunate situation. My heart softened completely. Since then, the relationship between Ting Man and me has changed qualitatively. He no longer spoke to me coldly. I became more and more skilled at acting coquettously. Grandpa was extremely happy to see that we were getting along well and cheerfully asked us to go on a honeymoon. I was already tired of staying in Europe. We went to an island in Thailand. I really liked creating trouble for him. When we were in a tuk-tuk, I would deliberately ask him in English, "Brother, won't your wife mind if you take me out to play?" When the driver's surprised gaze came from the rearview mirror, Ting Man would grab my mischievous hand. Looking helpless. "Stop being naughty." He wouldn't explain to a stranger he had just met. But it was different during meetings. Ting Man would grab me and bring me in front of the camera, asking me to say hello to everyone. "This is my wife. She likes to be playful." He grabbed me so urgently that I fell on him. And not only that, my clothes and hair were all in a mess. I said in a low voice, "It's all your fault." Ting Man could only clumsily help me tidy up. After doing this, he aimed the camera at me. I ended up shooting myself in the foot and forced a smile. Hello, everyone. The people on the screen were all unfamiliar to me. They were not the senior executives of the ZHI King family group. Ah, right. Ting Man started his own business after graduating from high school. Now the technology company in his hands has achieved a small scale. After I finished saying hello, he said, I have something to deal with here. We'll have the meeting later. I couldn't help raising my eyebrows. So capricious? I said in a sullen voice. I thought you would tell me, like before, not to do such boring things. He sighed. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to consider your feelings at that time. I exclaimed. So you still remember? How could he not remember? Ting Man also knew that our relationship started to deteriorate from that time. Right? He might have thought about making amends. But no one told him what to do. Later, I went abroad. It became even more difficult to ease our relationship. You never came to see me even once when I was abroad. You didn't want to see me. He was afraid that if I saw him, I wouldn't even accept his gifts. I covered the mouth that only said discouraging words in front of me. His eyes widened in surprise. I became angry out of embarrassment. Close your eyes. In this regard, Ting Man has always been exceptionally talented. He quickly took the initiative. I hugged his neck tightly, as if I had found a life-saving driftwood when I was about to drown. I don't know how long it took before he finally let me go. Actually, I did go. Ting Man patted my back to help me catch my breath. His eyes, which were always calm and indifferent, now sparkled with light. I asked him, but every time, you only dared to look at me from a distance under the window, right? Yes, hadn't fulfilled one session. I thought you didn't want to see me. Distant memories suddenly flooded back. It was my second year in France. I held a big birthday party in the first year. I was too lazy to do it in the second year. When my friends brought back the cake, they were discussing, there's a really handsome Asian guy downstairs. He looks so familiar. Didn't he also come last year? I remember he stood downstairs for a long time last year. Emma even went to ask for his contact information but didn't get it. My roommate smeared cream on my face and joked deliberately. Mia, at Losai. Is he here for you? There weren't many Asian faces in this dormitory building. I had an unlikely answer in my heart. But when I ran to the window to look, the person was already gone. I said helplessly, if you don't show up, how do you know I don't want to see you? He was so confident. He was so aloof. Even in the face of me and love, he could be timid at times. I kissed the hands that had made so many gifts for me. In his heart, I must be unique, right? That's why he made so many unique things and gave them to me. I poked his chest. Don't do this again in the future. If you love someone, you should say it out loud. In response to me was his passionate kiss. After having fun for more than half a month, we returned to China. Grandpa hinted several times, hoping that we would quickly give him a great-grandchild. I wanted to too. But Ting Man refused to comply no matter what. Before this happy life lasted long, you appeared again. While Ting Man was on a business trip, he blocked me in the company's parking lot. I panicked as soon as I saw him. Seeing me take half a step back, you said eagerly, "Zhi King. It's me. I'm you." Of course I know you're you. I said with a cold face. What do you want? I should go home now. You changed your phone number and even deleted my contact information. Why? He really knew how to hurt me. I could only adopt a conciliatory policy. I softened my expression and pretended to be helpless, saying, let's break up. It's better for both of us. You also know that Ting Man is not someone to be trifled with. Then, let's elope. Let's go to a place where he can't find us. I tried to persuade him earnestly. You also know that I'm used to this kind of life. If we elope, the love between us will soon be worn away by the trivialities of daily life. It's better to keep it in its most beautiful state. Don't tell me you've fallen in love with Ting Man. Do I deserve to be abandoned by you? He didn't listen to my explanation at all. I was about to say something more, but you had already revealed his ferocious face. He grabbed my hair with such force that it seemed he was going to tear off my scalp. When I cried for help, he punched me and knocked me unconscious. Before losing consciousness, I thought that the plot had advanced. In my previous life, not long after I divorced Ting Man, I married you. But he was a gambler and had no ability to manage a company. Both of us were useless. Coupled with failed investments, we quickly squandered our family fortune. After that, his true colors were revealed, and he would resort to domestic violence at the slightest disagreement. The last time, he stabbed me with a knife. At that time, Ting Man was restricted by his uncle and couldn't take care of me all the time. By the time he arrived, I was already on the verge of death. In this life, the plot of you hurting me actually started at this time. When I woke up, I was in a shabby and old house. I was tied to the bed, and my limbs were bound, unable to move. You came in from the door. Stop struggling. It's useless. He sat by the bedside and stroked my cheek. I want to see if Ting Man will still want you after he sees you having an affair with me with his own eyes. Only then did I notice that the room was filled with cameras. He was simply a psychopath. I forced myself to calm down, but I still couldn't help shaking. I was so scared. The brutal and bloody scenes from my previous life were still vivid in my mind. Shh. Don't be afraid. Zhi King. Don't you love me? Let's do something fun. Okay? I gritted my teeth. What do you want? Money? I can give it to you. I'm the only descendant of the Zhi King family. As long as you don't hurt me, my grandpa will agree to any amount of money you ask for. His expression suddenly turned cold. You don't love me at all, do you? All those words before were lies, right? It was he who lied to me first. He pretended to be kind and approachable, always catering to my every need. I thought it was love. I was horribly wrong. You took out a stack of photos and threw them in my face. The photos were all of me snuggling up to Ting Man. You've fallen in love with him, haven't you? You're just a slut that anyone can have. He slapped me. Its tongue horribly. You had been used to seeing his mother, can be translated as mingling with different men, since he was a child. He hated to face women extremely. In my previous life, he saw me smiling at the fishmonger guy. Coupled with a pile of debts, he simply killed me and then committed suicide. In this life, I thought I could escape harm by staying away from him. I was wrong. He was a lunatic. With a rip sound, you tore my clothes. I struggled desperately, and my hands and feet were rubbed dry by the rough ropes. But it was all in vain. Please let me go. Okay? We can talk it out. I'm begging you. He seemed not to hear me. At this moment, the door was forcefully kicked open. My voice choked up. Ting Man. I'm here. Ting Man's expression was fierce. He kicked over the camera blocking his way. Then, what a low sigh. He grabbed Yu's neck and threw him to the ground. Ting Man's movements were too fast. You didn't even have time to react before he was straddled by Ting Man. Ting Man seemed to be aroused like a wild beast. His eyes were red, and he pressed down on you tightly, swinging his fists. Each punch landed on the flesh. Soon, when out a low sigh, there was blood. I was really afraid that you would be beaten to death by him. He still has to seek justice for his parents and take back what belongs to him. He shouldn't stain his hands with dirty blood because of me. Ting Man. It hurts. Only then did Ting Man seem to regain a bit of his rationality. He released you and walked towards me. You lay on the ground like a rotten fish. Ting Man directly took off his shirt and covered me with it. He asked softly, "Where does it hurt?" "Everywhere." He untied me, hugged me, and said, "It's okay. It's all over. I'm here." My tears flowed onto his shoulder socket, and the heat made him tremble as well. At this moment, a dark gun barrel pressed against his back. I really didn't expect that you would have a gun. What's more unexpected is how ruthless Ting Man is. He directly reached behind him to snatch the gun. The two of them tussled with each other. I picked up a stool, wanting to help Ting Man, but I found that I simply couldn't get involved. Suddenly, there was a gunshot. You covered his shoulder and fell to the ground. Ting Man stood not far away, holding the gun. His finger was about to pull the trigger. I shouted, "No." Then, roared out a low sigh. I immediately pounced on you. The bullet grazed my shoulder. I was so scared that I was shaking. When I raised my head, I found that Ting Man's face was terrifyingly gloomy. You'd rather die yourself than save him, right? I quickly got up and said, "It's not like that. I'm just afraid that you'll be charged with a crime." He stared at me intently and said, "The kindness you showed me was just to go back to him. Right? No. I've never thought that way." He mocked himself. "No matter what he did, you still take his side. I shouldn't have come to save you. I was just being sentimental." Before he finished speaking, Ting Man pushed me away. There was a dull groan. The wine bottle shattered on his head. After throwing the wine bottle, "You ran away." Ting Man kicked him in the back. "You staggered and fell to the ground." Motionless. Blood trickled down Ting Man's face. I exclaimed and wanted to check his wound, but he turned his head aside and pointed at his forehead. "I've repaid the ZHI King family for their kindness in raising me." ZHI King. As you wish. We're getting a divorce. We were supposed to be entangled for another half a year. How could this happen? I quickly explained. "I didn't want you to kill him. Excessive self-defense will lead to a prison sentence. At that time, you was closer to me. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to stop you in time. So I pounced on him. No one wants you to die more than I do. He could die in a car accident, commit suicide, or die at the hands of others. But he definitely can't die at the hands of the person I love." I admit that I didn't think it through. But I just acted on impulse. I didn't want you to bear any charges. I even forgot that I might get hurt. When I said this, I choked up. "I'm not lying to you. Ting Man. I really like you." Ting Man didn't say a word and tied up the unconscious you. The sound of police sirens came from outside. We both had to go back to the police station to give statements. Before getting in the car, Ting Man said, "I don't want to be in the same car as her. It makes me annoyed just looking at her." My lips trembled. I could hardly believe that these words came out of his mouth. But he just got in the car without looking back. Grandpa picked us up and took us home. I wanted to say something. But when I met Ting Man's cold gaze, I couldn't say anything. As soon as we got home, he went into his room. He didn't give me a chance to be alone with him at all. ZHI King. You go back to your room and rest first. Do you want someone to accompany you? Should Grandpa call Dr. Lee over? Dr. Lee is a psychologist. Grandpa was afraid that after going through these terrible things, I wouldn't be able to get out of the shadow on my own. But now, what I'm more afraid of is that Ting Man really wants to divorce me. I pursed my lips. And tears were about to fall. "Grandpa." He patted my hand and said, "Grandpa knows everything. Don't worry. Go and rest first. Dear. Grandpa has always hoped that we would be together. When I was insisting on getting a divorce in my previous life, he even claimed that he would cut off the relationship with me. Grandpa will definitely safeguard our marriage." The light in Grandpa's study was on all night. I couldn't fall asleep at all. When I paced back and forth in front of the study door for the last time, Grandpa finally called out to me. "ZHI King. Come in." I was a bit nervous. When I opened the door, I found that there was only Grandpa in the room. "Where is he?" "Ting Man has decided to move out. There's a divorce agreement on the table." "ZHI King. You didn't want this marriage in the first place. Now it can be considered." "It's not like that. Grandpa. You know that I like him. I've already explained. I didn't want to save you. I was just afraid that he would really kill him. I didn't want him to commit a crime because of me." Grandpa sighed and said, "ZHI King. You two don't have fate. No one will always wait for you in the same place. Ting Man is tired. Then this time, I'll be the one to chase him. I'll do it. It's useless. If his heart wasn't dead, how could he have proposed a divorce? You know that he always means what he says." Finally, cutting Fustel Rayad Sashim. I burst into tears. After that, Ting Man never came back. He took the initiative to hand over the management rights of the ZHI King family and focused on managing his own technology company. Without his support, the entire huge ZHI King family group fell on Grandpa's shoulders. To everyone's surprise, I adjusted myself quickly and went to work. In my previous life, I never thought about managing the family business. I just did whatever I wanted all day long. I couldn't see people clearly. And I deserved the ending I got. Heaven has given me a chance to start over. I can't make the same mistakes again. So, As soon as I came back from the honeymoon, I started working in a subsidiary of the ZHI King family. The best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. And the second best time is now. Fortunately, having fulfilled Lee. It's not too late yet. There was obvious distress on Grandpa's face. ZHI King. You don't have to force yourself. In my previous life, you did even worse things to me. And I got through it. This is nothing at all. I'm not forcing myself. Grandpa, I really want to share your burden. In the future, the ZHI King family won't be left without a successor. Seeing that I was determined, Grandpa didn't persuade me anymore and just said, "It's good to find something to do." I know what he meant. He wants me to work hard so that I can forget Ting Man. After calming down for several days, I finally realized that something was wrong. These days, I had fallen into the strange cycle of self-justification. I couldn't wait to tell everyone that I didn't want to save you and that I loved Ting Man. But the problem wasn't here at all. I'm so stupid. Ting Man is so smart that he couldn't possibly not feel that I'm on his side. What's more, I've explained it so many times. He clearly saw my pain and distress. And Grandpa has always wanted Ting Man to inherit the family business of the ZHI King family. He wouldn't let him go so easily. There must be a reason for all of this. But what on earth is the reason? I planned to go to Ting Man and ask him clearly. I went to Ting Man's technology company. After making a phone call, the receptionist said, "I'm sorry, Miss ZHI King. The president isn't here. You know who I am? I've never been here before." The receptionist gave a dry laugh. "Did Ting Man tell you that as soon as you see me, you should say he's not here? Tell him that I'm here to talk about the divorce with him. If he doesn't show up, I won't sign the papers." Only then did the receptionist pick up the phone again and repeat my words to the other end. "Miss ZHI King. The president is in a meeting. You need to wait for a while." "Fine, cutting fulfill grand thigh. I'll wait. Ting Man knows that I'm proud. He wants me to give up when I encounter difficulties." I waited from morning until afternoon. During that time, I kept working on my computer and even forgot to eat. When my stomach growled in protest, I ordered a takeout and ate it boldly in the lobby. After I finished eating, the receptionist said, "Miss ZHI King. The president is waiting for you in his office." I took the elevator upstairs. "Come in." Ting Man's voice sounded. I pushed the door open and went in. He had lost weight. And his cheeks were sunken. There was also a scar on his forehead. My nose twitched with sadness. I had secretly sworn that I wouldn't hurt him and wouldn't let him have a scar on his forehead. But he still got hurt because of me. Moreover, the position of this scar was exactly the same as in my previous life. Seeing me in a daze, Ting Man frowned slightly. And his voice was cold. "Have you signed the divorce agreement? If you have any questions, I can ask my lawyer to talk to you." "Ting Man. How many times do I have to tell you? I won't divorce you. I didn't do anything wrong." He didn't even raise his head and continued to look at the documents on the table. "It's meaningless to say these things now. I advise you to sign the papers quickly. It's better for both you and me. If we go through the litigation process, the ZHI King family can't afford to lose face. Ting Man, I want you to give me a reason. A real reason. Don't say that nonsense about you being heartbroken by me." I choked up again. The scenes of him being nice to me seemed like they were just yesterday. How could things change so quickly? Ting Man just looked at me infuriately. "You want a reason? Fine. I'll tell you. I've fallen in love with someone else. You're selfish and willful. You take my efforts for granted and demand that I obey you in everything." "Yes, hadin so wide session. I do owe the ZHI King family. But that doesn't mean that I have to be a dog of the ZHI King family forever. I'm fed up with all of this." I never knew that he could say such hurtful words. My lips trembled. And I wanted to defend myself. But I couldn't say anything. Ting Man's knuckles turned white as he gripped the documents. The air was extremely silent. At this moment, the door of the lounge opened. Shun looked down at her close. There was also a set of dresses draped over her arm. It seemed that she had just changed her clothes. What kind of thing would require changing clothes in Ting Man's exclusive lounge? Ting Man. Why is there? When she saw me. Shuang's voice caught in her throat. Ting Man waved at her and said in a gentle voice. Shun. Come here. Xing stood there in a daze. Don't be afraid. I have no relationship with her anymore. Just like in my previous life. He defended another woman right in front of me. He's really something. I turned around neatly and left. In fact, I waited in the underground parking lot, next to Shuang's car. I might believe it if Ting Man found someone else to act in this play. But he just had to choose Xun. The person Xun loves is from the Yan family. In my previous life, their love story was earth-shattering. Xun couldn't possibly fall in love with Ting Man. He must have some unavoidable difficulties. Which is why he wants to separate from me. When Xun saw me, she seemed indifferent and was about to get in the car and leave without saying a word. I spoke first. Didn't Ting Man tell you in advance before acting in this play? She paused. I took a drag on the cigarette. But it choked me so much that tears welled up in my eyes. Ting Man's acting skills are really clumsy. And you're so naive. Only then did Xing pour out everything in one go. Just like pouring out beans. Damn it. I just came to ask him something. But not only did he force me to stay for dinner, he even deliberately splashed my skirt and made it dirty. I made this skirt myself. It's my favorite one. Everything was clear now. Ting Man, Ling Lunaon. That self-righteous fool. He even specially prepared a set of clothes and asked Xing to change into them in the lounge. All of this was to make me misunderstand. Xing scratched her head irritably. What on earth happened between you two? He told me not to meet you in the future. And even if I see you, I should pretend not to see you. So that you would keep being misled. I shook my head and gave a bitter smile. Do I look like I know what's going on? It's him who unilaterally wants to draw a clear line with me. Xing pursed her lips and didn't ask any more questions. Before leaving, she stuck her head out of the car window and said, Stop smoking. You two are really interesting. The one who can smoke wants to quit. And the one who can't smoke insists on learning. My friend's company had a cooperation with Ting Man's. I went to their dinner party. When he saw me, Ting Man's gaze froze slightly. But he didn't say anything. He treated me like a stranger throughout the whole process. I kept drinking. My eyes blurred. And I stared at him intently. Ting Man finally couldn't sit still and excused himself to go to the restroom. This was exactly what I wanted. I directly blocked him in the men's restroom cubicle. At this moment, we were only a short distance apart. Ting Man frowned and tried to push me out. You're drunk. This is the men's restroom. I know. I stood on tiptoe and kissed his chin. Ting Man panicked and whispered harshly. ZHI King of the ZHI King family. Call me ZHI King. In the previous life, Ting Man would only whisper these two words in my ear when we were at our most intimate. In this life, he had never called me like that before. Ting Man fell silent. I became even bolder and hugged him like an octopus. Don't worry. No one will see us here. Let go of me first. No. I said with drunken eyes. If I let go, you'll run away. He pursed his lips. As if he was going to use force. And grabbed my wrist, tightening it inch by inch. I felt the pain. And tears welled up in my eyes. But I didn't let go. Ting Man finally gave in. What on earth do you want? Don't treat me like this. Ting Man. We've already missed so many years. This time, I don't want to make the same mistake again. Let's face whatever comes together. Okay? Ting Man's voice was cold and firm. What nonsense are you talking about? Do I really have to die in front of you for you to open up to me? Ting Man. You know I'm a hopeless romantic. Grandpa has already told me. Why did you exclude me without asking for my opinion? And Shun. If you want to act next time, make it more realistic. Okay? You can hug, cuddle, or even kiss in front of me. But just saying, Shun. Who would believe it? I'm so angry. He hasn't even called me Sahachai King yet. Ting Man pursed his lips, closed his eyes, and said, You're the only child in the ZHI King family. Sure enough, they were hiding something from me. He meant that he was afraid I would be in danger. I shrugged. There's also my dad. If worst comes to worst, I'll force him to have another child. My mom died of massive bleeding when she gave birth to me. My dad was heartbroken and originally planned to become a monk. But the abbot said his heart wasn't at peace and refused to accept him. So he turned around and went to the Antarctic, determined to dedicate his whole life to scientific research. He probably doesn't like me. Because of my birth. He lost his beloved wife. Mom died when they were deeply in love. So my dad rarely came back. From childhood to adulthood, I could count on my fingers the number of times I saw him. I don't know if he came to my funeral in the previous life. He should have come. Since he came back for Grandpa's funeral. I was close to Ting Man when I was a child. A big part of the reason was that I thought we were similar. We both didn't have the love of our parents. Saying these words has already taken all the courage I have in my life. Ting Man, wanapana. You know I don't often lower my head to coax people. But because it's you, I'm willing to do it. What about you? Will you be with me? Ting Man was still hesitating. I continued. Since we got married, I've already been involved in this mess. I can't get out of it. If you don't want to, I'll just pester you every day. Let everyone know that we're still on the same side. Ting Man looked straight at me. As if he wanted to find determination and no regret in my eyes. Finally, cutting Kafeldmayo, he uttered the word okay. Only then did I ask. So, what exactly have you and Grandpa been hiding from me? Is it because of Wu? Wu was Ting Man's uncle. After Ting Man's parents died, Wu took everything from the Wu family. If it weren't for Grandpa, Ting Man might have starved to death on the streets. After thinking it over, this was the only possibility. But I didn't know why he wanted to divorce me just after you kidnapped me. Was there any connection between you and Wu? Only then did Ting Man realize that he had fallen into my trap. He's a very smart and alert person. Normally, cutting Kafeldmaid session. With just my few ambiguous words, I definitely couldn't deceive him. But now, his heart had been disrupted by me. Ting Man gave a hem. You shouldn't have a gun. And he's never been to Thailand. Those photos were given to him by someone else. I suspect that all of this is related to Wu. But he's done it too cleanly. And we can't trace it back to him. You doesn't even know who the mastermind behind the scenes is. He thinks that he caused all of this himself and hasn't realized that someone is fanning the flames. That's why Ting Man had to act that scene in front of you and deliberately say those words. Regarding what happened that day, if we wanted to know, he could only find someone to hint at you. And you, that psychopath, really thought I still loved him after I protected him with my body. Ting Man wanted to tell Wu Fuyu that our relationship had broken down and that he had already broken with the Zhi King family. He wanted to keep me and the Zhi King family out of it and deal with Wu alone. I suddenly thought of something. I'm not a fool. I understood everything now. You, that idiot, was completely under Wu's control. When I was on the verge of death in the previous life, you told me that he pushed Grandpa down the stairs. That old man was too much of an obstacle. Zhi King. Without him, I can't really have you all to myself, and we can be together forever. After Grandpa passed away, the situation in the Zhi King family changed completely. The uncles who used to be kind showed their greedy true colors. The Zhi King family was in chaos. And you and I had no management ability and no talent for investment. In less than a few years, all the assets in our hands were squandered. Now that I think about it, everything was so logical. There was always someone appearing and telling you which investment was good. They talked plausibly and urged him to steal my money for investment. You did as they said. But he always failed. It turned out that it was all a setup by Wu. From the very beginning, he didn't just want to deal with Ting Man. He had great ambitions, and also wanted to swallow up the entire Zhi King family. Grandpa's death and the decline of the Zhi King family were all brought about by him through Yu's hands. Without Grandpa, I was nothing to be afraid of. And everything happened as a matter of course. Even you killing me and then committing suicide might have been instigated by him. Yu's emotions were extremely unstable and would explode at the slightest provocation. This time he could give you the photos of me and Ting Man being intimate. So in the previous life, he could also give him the photo of me smiling at the fishmonger guy. Yu was just a small pawn. Wu was the mastermind behind the scenes. I clenched my palms tightly. I hated him so much. Grandpa's death. All my sufferings. Ting Man's tragic background. It was all because of him. I want him to die. Seeing my pale face, Ting Man took the initiative to hug me and coaxed me in a low voice. Don't be afraid. It's all in the past. Grandpa will protect you. As long as you stay away from me, you'll be fine. I looked up. Wu won't let me go. Since Grandpa adopted you, we've already been on the opposite side of him. And you know better than me how big Wu's appetite is. He could even kill his own biological brother. What else couldn't he do? Ting Man. I'm not afraid. Not at all. I've already died once. If worst comes to worst, I can die again. But this time, even if I die, I'll drag her to hell with me. I said word by word. Ting Man. From now on, we'll advance and retreat together. He stared at me for a long time. His eyes gradually turned red. After a long while, he said in a hoarse voice. Okay. Ting Man and I still got divorced. At the dinner party, he sneered and said, Miss of the ZHI King family, you didn't come here just to be a mascot. Did you? I've told you not to pester me anymore. Being exposed in front of everyone. I was so angry that I was shaking. I splashed wine all over his face. Ting Man. I was really blind to think that I could entrust my life to you. Probably because he had drunk some wine. Ting Man, who was always calm and composed, also became excited. Entrust your life to me. Huh. What on earth do you people in the ZHI King family take me for? You don't think I want to be a dog of the ZHI King family for the rest of my life, do you? Many people witnessed this quarrel. Naturally, hadn't fulfilled Ryan's sigh. It could reach Wu's ears. Later, Ting Man sued me and Grandpa in court. We signed an agreement before marriage. Once we got divorced, he would leave the family with nothing. But he didn't agree and claimed that he had put in a lot of effort in the ZHI King family over the years and deserved a share of the pie. For a while, it caused a great stir. Everyone said that the ZHI King family had raised an ungrateful wolf that would bite its hand that fed it. During the lawsuit, Grandpa was so angry that he collapsed on the spot. Grandpa was once in critical condition. And even my dad, whom I hadn't seen for a long time, came back. In fact, Grandpa was quite capable. Under his management, the internal affairs of the ZHI King family group were very stable. As long as everyone didn't cause trouble and did their jobs, the company could operate as usual for a long time. I, as the president, was actually just a figurehead. What's more, there was my dad. Although he hadn't managed the company's affairs for a long time, he was still better than me. This time, Grandpa threatened to die, so he finally agreed to come back. So many things happened in just 3 months. And I was once decadent and depressed. When Xin came to see me, she couldn't help but marvel. I really didn't expect Ting Man to be such a person. She knew Ting Man quite well. If she could be deceived, then we should also believe it to a large extent. Our first step was successful. With Grandpa around, we didn't dare to act rashly. So we pretended to break up first and let Grandpa pretend to faint and go to Switzerland for recuperation. In fact, it was to make Wu lower his guard, making him think that Ting Man was all alone and making him feel that I was not a threat. I also went to see you. He was in tears, begging me to save him. ZHI King. I didn't do it on purpose. I just love you so much. And you know that. He kept talking about the past when we were together. I also seemed to be moved and said to him, I will definitely save you. But this matter is not that simple. Ting Man was also injured. Moreover, he hates us so much. He definitely won't let it go easily. I even issued a letter of understanding. My father didn't know about the plan between Ting Man and me. He was confused about my behavior but didn't say much. I wasn't close to him. He was just a part of the plan. With him in charge of the ZHI King family, those uncles and elders wouldn't act rashly for the time being. So I didn't explain either. During breakfast, Yu's lawyer just called. Yeah. I've already written the letter of understanding. I don't blame him. He just loves me too much. As I spoke, I started crying and pleaded with the lawyer to save him. This lawyer was one of Wu's men. I had to act. When I hung up the phone, I found that my father across the dining table was frowning. This is not love. If someone truly loves another person, they will never hurt the other party under the pretext of love. During this period, it was just my father and me in the villa of the ZHI King family. He didn't like to talk much. And I adhered to the principle of going all out with the act. I looked sad and heartbroken all day long, as if I was hurt by love. We had very few conversations. To be honest, this was the first time he took the initiative to start a conversation with me. Apart from matters related to business. I sneered. A person who has never given me love is not qualified to teach me what love is. I met Ting Man very few times. Wu should have arranged a lot of informants around him. The places where we met were really strange. The restroom. The amusement park. The park at night. Once, while he was on a business trip, I also bought a plane ticket to the city next to his, and then drove alone to meet him. Ting Man felt extremely distressed. Are you tired? I shook my head. Love can relieve fatigue. Seeing that I was still in the mood to use such a strange pun, he gently kissed my forehead and said, I miss you so much. This was a long battle line. This situation would last for a long time. We enjoyed a rare moment of peace. I nestled in his arms and suddenly thought of something. Have you quit smoking? Yeah. Since you don't like it, I won't smoke anymore. He buried his face in my neck and took a deep breath. Moreover, I have a new way to relieve stress now. I never thought that Ting Man could be so good at saying sweet words. It was quite embarrassing. I covered my face and squirmed in his arms like a maggot. He said in a hoarse voice, Don't move. After a while, Ting Man put on an apron and asked me, What do you want to eat tonight? I brought up the old score. Eat shung. He was helpless and hugged me again. Don't make fun of me. I didn't do it on purpose. ZHI King. ZHI King. Can I call you like this from now on? He coaxed me for a while before I nodded and agreed. Ting Man was really good at cooking. He learned everything quickly. After dinner, I took out a small gift box. This is your birthday present. I'm not as amazing as you. You can learn anything quickly and discover a new skill every year. I was destined not to be present on his birthday, so I could only give him the gift in advance. Ting Man opened the box, and his face was filled with surprise. It was a jade tiger that I carved myself. Ting Man was born in the year of the tiger. This thing was really difficult to carve. His eyes turned red again. I really never thought that Ting Man was such a crybaby. He had always been strong and calm. In my previous life, except when I died, I hardly ever saw his eyes turn red. It's very beautiful. I like it very much. I curled my lips. I'm glad you like it. It wasn't in vain that I learned it for so long. Wasted a lot of jade stones. I also rushed and stayed up several late nights to finish the work before his birthday. Ting Man still thought it wasn't enough and kept praising me. He praised me from the selection of materials to the carving techniques. I felt quite embarrassed. I was a bit skeptical. Is it really that good? It's very good. Extremely good. The corners of my mouth almost reached the sky. Then if I have time in the future, I'll carve a few more for you. Love is something that needs positive feedback. Ting Man obviously knew this very well. The time we spent together was always short. We had to return to our respective positions. I still acted depressed. I even stubbornly stuck to my own opinions, and had a big quarrel with my father during a meeting. When I was getting drunk in a bar, a man appeared beside me. It was Ziyu, Wu's eldest son. He was particularly similar to Ting Man at certain moments. Wu's plan was starting. Everyone knew that I was infatuated with love. After all, who could forgive someone who kidnapped and hurt themselves? Oh, right. I forgot to mention that with Ting Man's efforts, Yu was sentenced to 20 years in prison. This time, Wu still chose to use a man to win me over. He thought he had figured out my complex feelings of loving and hating Ting Man. When I was at my most vulnerable, he let Ziyu, who was most like Ting Man, appear. It was quite clever. But some methods that worked the first time might not work the second time. After I poured out my grievances, Ziyu thoughtfully sent me home. Since then, he started encountering me in various places. As he wished, I showed my favor to him. Even when I was drunk, I cried and shouted at him. Ting Man. Don't leave. Ziyu showed great respect for me. Because of what happened with you, I would feel scared and nauseous whenever I had too much contact with a man. This was a setting I gave myself. I was afraid that he would really touch me. Ziyu believed it. Early the next morning, when I saw that he had been staying by my side, I was deeply touched. As a matter of course, we got together. Ziyu played the role of being understanding and attentive. Just like you had done before. The two men I had loved strangely merged in him. We didn't even have a single quarrel. I have to say that Wood had quite some skills in manipulating people's minds. Under his guidance, Ziyu, who was originally like a piece of rotten mud, became a good actor. In the eyes of everyone. It was because of Ziyu's company that I could gradually get better. Even my father, who had always disapproved of my involvement with the Wu family, showed his kindness after Ziyu visited our home. I started deliberately discussing investment matters in front of Ziyu. This was called using the opponent's own method against them. Everything in my previous life was still vivid in my memory. I knew clearly which investments could bring returns in the short term. As soon as I was reborn, I started working hard in this area. Ziyu's eyes lit up when he saw me making money. He started making veiled hints. I didn't hold back at all. My grandpa joined the army in his early years and has many good friends. These were all told to me by my grandpa. He said that I should learn either management or investment. Ziyu was tempted and started investing with me. Time flew by, and 3 years passed. Ziyu became more and more eager and wanted to talk to me about getting married. He knew that I still hated Ting Man and deliberately provoked me. Zhi King. Don't you want to make Ting Man lose everything and be disgraced? If we get married, it's like a powerful combination. Ting Man thinks that my father killed his parents and has been looking for trouble with my father. You also know how despicable he is. He's just using the excuse of avenging his parents to try to take back the Zhang Corporation. Once we get married, let's see how arrogant he can be. I thought for a moment. I dream of making him kowtow and apologize to me. But Ziyu, I don't want our love to be mixed with too many other things. TSK. These were words that someone infatuated with love would say. Ziyu's expression was quite subtle. There was the pretended touch, the pride of thinking he had me in his grasp, and the sneer of laughing at my stupidity. Anyway, Kadin sailed land fashion. In the end, I agreed to marry him. Ziyu planned to propose to me at Wu's birthday banquet. For this birthday banquet, Wu invited all the celebrities in the city. Ziyu even specially sent an invitation to Ting Man. It was the inferiority of men at work. Although Ziyu might not love me that much, he still wanted to show off in front of Ting Man. When the banquet was in full swing, Ziyu held a bouquet of roses and knelt down on one knee. I covered my mouth with a pretended surprised expression. My eyes filled with tears. Help! I was almost convinced by my own acting skills. When I said I do, the atmosphere of the whole venue became very enthusiastic. Ziyu hugged me tightly and kissed my cheek. My gaze swept over Ting Man. The sadness on his face didn't seem to be fake. I came up with this plan. Ting Man didn't approve of it. He said that as long as he was given time, he was sure to bring down Wu. But I couldn't wait. I was afraid every moment. This time, I didn't want to be passive. I wanted to take the initiative. Wu and my father were happy to see this happen and were chatting and laughing aside. Our marriage was more or less settled. The relationship between the Wu family and the Zhi King family was also getting closer and closer. Everything seemed to be developing in a good direction. Soon, let out a low sigh. The crucial move came. I told Ziyu that there was a piece of land in the west that the government planned to develop vigorously. Because of my grandpa's connections, Ziyu didn't suspect anything. Moreover, over the past few years, he had indeed made a lot of money by following me. It would cost 400 million to buy this piece of land. Ziyu didn't have that much money. I suggested partnering with several trustworthy friends. But he was greedy and didn't want to share the benefits with others. It was exactly his greed that I wanted. I pretended to be distressed, but I don't have much cash or shares in my hands. My grandpa is very strict. Under his instigation, I stole the jadeite that was the token of love between my grandparents. It was worth tens of millions. Under my encouragement, Ziyu embezzled public funds and also used his shares in the Zhang Corporation as collateral before he managed to scrape together the money. It was the first time he had done such a thing, and Ziyu was obviously a bit nervous. I comforted him. It doesn't matter. We can make up for it when we sell the land. At worst, we still have my grandpa and her father. Even if the matter is exposed, they won't let anything happen to you. Don't forget. You are the only son-in-law of the Zhi King family. We are in the same boat now, and there won't be any problems. There was a faint, uncontrollable excitement on his face. Wu had quite a few illegitimate children, and his second wife had also given birth to 2 children. Ziyu couldn't wait to achieve something. If he became the son-in-law of the Zhi King family and made a lot of money, proving his ability, wouldn't the Zhang Corporation be within his grasp in the future? That's what he thought. As soon as I turned around, I curled my lips. He didn't even understand the routine of a pig slaughtering scam. What a fool. That piece of land was already in the hands of Ting Man's people. Buying it for 400 million was considered a high price. Ting Man made a fortune. As time passed, Ziyu became more and more uneasy. Why hasn't the news about the development of the West been released yet? Only after the news was released would someone want to buy the land in his hands. I comforted him. Just wait a bit longer. My grandpa won't lie to us. Think about it. Have I ever failed in any investment before? Ziyu had no choice but to listen to me. In the evening, I took a bottle of red wine and went to find Ting Man to celebrate. But at this time, he was neither at the company nor at home. I called him, but he didn't answer. Instead, he sent me a message: I still have something to do. Let's meet later. I felt a bit uneasy. Very uneasy. My eyelids kept twitching. Ting Man had always indulged me. Even during a meeting, he could leave everyone behind and come to coax me first. So why was he like this time? My intuition told me that things were not that simple. I drove home and took out a mobile phone from the hidden compartment under the bed. This mobile phone could track Ting Man's driving route. It showed that he had gone to a construction site. That place was the property of the Wu family. I followed him there. The construction site was deserted. There were only several heavy machines standing there, giving it a somewhat eerie atmosphere. My heart was pounding. But Ting Man's car was parked here. He must be here. I still went in. I hadn't walked far when I heard the sound of a fight. A stifled groan. It was Ting Man. Before I could react, a hard object pressed against the back of my head. Go up. I was escorted upstairs. Ting Man was lying on the edge of the building, his face covered in blood, and his life hanging in the balance. It seemed that with just a gust of wind, he would fall. Downstairs was a large area of cement. If someone was thrown in, they would slowly sink into the cement and die of suffocation. In the end, it would be difficult to even find the body. This was a place carefully chosen by Wu for killing and burying the body. Wu seemed a bit irritated. Damn it. What are you doing here? Obviously, my appearance had disrupted his plan. Are you two courting death one after another? I ignored him and instead shouted anxiously, Ting Man. Only then did he move, opening his swollen and red eyelids, and using all his strength to say, quick. Go. Just this one sentence made me burst into tears. Wu snorted coldly. So you two are still lingering on. Then what was your intention of marrying my son? To avenge this bastard? I threatened him. Will. If you dare to touch me, my grandpa won't let you off. An old man on his last legs is nothing to be afraid of. I've already called the police when I came here. I hadn't actually called the police. I said this just to make him wary. It would be great if I could fight for a glimmer of hope. Wu laughed at my naivety. He wasn't afraid. He could run away. As long as he wasn't caught red-handed, it would be fine. Even if the matter was exposed, with his power, influence, and wealth, he could just find a scapegoat. Niece. We have no grudges against each other. I'll give you a quick and painless death. No grudges against each other. He said it so lightly. He killed my grandpa, Ting Man's parents, and me. I didn't know where I got the strength from. But I broke free from the restraint of his subordinates. Then I pounced on Wu and bit his face tightly. I wanted him to pay for his crimes with his own blood. Why? Why did he win again this time? I was so unwilling. Blood filled my mouth. Wu let out a cry of pain and kept struggling. His subordinate sponged and kicked me. But I didn't feel the pain. Someone raised a gun barrel at me. Suddenly, Hadam alar. There was a cry of alarm, Chi King. Someone stood in front of me. A gunshot rang out. I bit off a piece of flesh from Wu's face. The person on me was shot. Dad? Run quickly. Dad pulled me and we fled in all directions. He protected me in his arms throughout the process. I shouted, Ting Man is still there. Dad couldn't care about that much. He could only protect me. Gunshots rang out everywhere. At the same time, the sound of police sirens sounded. A beam of light shot from somewhere. Wu had originally planned to kick Ting Man down. But at this moment, he could only cover his face and fled the scene in a hurry. 19. Chi King. In the hospital bed, Ting Man suddenly woke up with a start. I held his hand tightly and soothed him. I'm here. I'm here. It was already the afternoon of the next day. I told him everything that had happened later. We were so lucky. There was actually a journalist lurking in the dark. He recorded everything. And we will definitely be punished. That beam of light was from the journalist. How about your dad? Is your dad okay? Yeah, having so selbwand session. He got shot in the arm. And the bullet has been taken out. He's lying in the ward next to yours. Grandpa is back and talking to him. I didn't know how to face him. He clearly didn't love me. Yet he could do such a thing. But Ting Man said, Chi King. He loves you very much. Protecting you was an instinctive action. I didn't want to talk about this and said evasively, I'll go buy you some porridge. When I left the ward, I realized that yesterday's incident was on the news. Reporter Kui put the video on social media. He also said at the end, if anything happens to me, it must be done by Wu. He was very smart. As a journalist, he knew how to use public opinion to protect himself. Now, this matter has caused a great stir. After watching the video, I learned that yesterday Wu was originally going to deal with a bully. Wu is a ruthless person who will stop at nothing to achieve his goals. For a piece of land, he forced the holdout to death. The bully saw all of this and used it to threaten Wu to give him money. Wu hated being blackmailed the most in his life. So he simply killed the bully to get rid of the future trouble. The construction site under construction was a carefully chosen place for him to commit the murder. But for some reason, Ting Man appeared. He also recorded a video of Wu's murder. But he was unfortunately caught and beaten to a pulp. The mobile phone used to record the video was also thrown into the cement. Wu decided to finish the job and simply kill him. At this moment, I came. Then my dad came. Everything that happened yesterday had a sense of coming back from the brink of death. The appearance of the journalist was too sudden. I always felt uneasy. I was afraid that this was another one of Wu's schemes. I was afraid that we would fall into Wu's trap again. I was afraid that he could still make a comeback from a desperate situation. I told Ting Man about my uneasiness. He let out a sigh and began to speak slowly. The night we returned from our honeymoon, I had a dream. In the dream, you divorced me and married you. But he didn't treat you well. He closed his eyes. His brows furrowed tightly. And his expression was filled with pain. Later, he killed you. You died in my arms. I couldn't accept all of this. I also found out that Wu was the mastermind behind the scenes. It took me a long time to bring down Wu and avenge you. What he said was not a dream. It was our previous life. Everything that had really happened. No wonder he was so determined to divorce me. He was afraid that the scene in the dream would come true and that Wu would target me. A sudden inspiration struck me. And I asked, so you knew that Wu would kill someone that day? Because in the dream, it was when the truth came to light. And you were able to bring him down because of that, right? Yeah. I knew that reporter Kui was there. 3 years later. It was because of the video he recorded that I was able to send Wu to prison. But the reality is different from the dream. Wu wasn't alone. I originally just planned to take a chance. But I almost died there. His tone was one of relief, fortunately. You came. You bought me some time. Ting Man actually knew better than anyone that it wasn't a dream. Everything we had done might trigger the butterfly effect. Perhaps in this life, Ting Man was too successful, making Wu cautious in everything. So he arranged for 2 of his subordinates to be with him. I suddenly became curious about what happened later. I went to find you. He said it lightly. But there was an unquenchable sadness in his eyes. I didn't expect this answer. I had thought that he would expand his business territory step by step. After all, he had always been ambitious. I had also thought that he really loved me. Maybe after going through many hardships, he would end up spending his old age alone. But I had never thought that he would commit suicide for love of me. Ting Man. You idiot. You finally managed to take back what belonged to the Wu family. How could you die like this? Are you crazy? I was so angry that I pounded him hard. Ting Man held my hands tightly, his breath trembling. Zhi King. I can't live without you. He gave a bitter smile. That dream was so real. I wanted to cut you into pieces. But he was already dead. And I couldn't even avenge you. I was living like a walking corpse. I regretted it deeply. I regretted every moment why I had divorced you. Even if you resented me or hated me, it wouldn't have ended up like that. I thought about death. I promoted the subordinate I had always favored and arranged everything. But I found out that your death was related to Wu. At that moment, my life had meaning again. The meaning you gave me. Only then did I notice the tear stains on his face. Zhi King. I had another dream last night. This time, we were both gray-haired. The tears in my eyes finally fell. After the matter of Wu's murder was exposed, one by one, the dirty things he had done in the past came to light. And I, in turn, reported Ziyu for embezzling public funds and attached a series of evidence. Realizing that he had fallen into a trap, Ziyu cursed in hatred, Zhi King of the Zhi King family. You're just a second and good for nothing. Do you think I really like you? I never even took a fancy to you. Ting Man stood in front of me. His tone understated but enough to pierce the heart. It was just a play. Yet you took it to heart. You're so frustrated that you deliberately insulted her with such words. Right? You're in love with Zhi King. Having his thoughts exposed, Ziyu's face turned pale and then red. Ting Man put his arm around my waist and kissed me in front of him. She has always been mine. There was a hint of pride in his tone. He was as proud as a child. Childish. Ziyu begged me to save him. He had sold the land in the West and emptied all his money. But he still couldn't make up for the huge amount of embezzled public funds. If he couldn't make up for it, he would have to go to prison for more than 10 years. Wu was too busy to care about him. After hearing about this, not only did he not help Ziyu, but he also scolded him for being a fool. His stepmother definitely wouldn't save him either. Zhi King. For the sake of our relationship for so long. I interrupted him with a cold laugh. What does it have to do with me? You could have stayed out of this mess. This was your own choice. He was willing to be the blade in Wu's hand to hurt me. So it was only natural for me to fight back. I changed the subject, however. As long as you're willing to help us, we'll also help you. You've seen a lot of the dirty work Wu has done. Right? At the same time, the Zhang family was in chaos. The children born to Wu and his second wife haven't grown up yet and are not a threat. As for his illegitimate children, they are all good for nothings. Wu can only pin his hopes on his second wife. However, he overestimated his wife's ambition. Moreover, she is well aware that Ting Man is not someone to be trifled with. Behind him is the entire Zhi King family. Even Wu has no chance of winning. So what can she do? She didn't want to confront Ting Man head-on. So she simply sold her shares to him. Because of Wu, the stock price of the Zhong Corporation plummeted. Ting Man easily acquired her shares. Together with Zhiyu's shares, Ting Man became the chairman of the Zhong Corporation with an absolute advantage. However, the Zhong Corporation that returned to his hands had already been severely damaged by Wu. I felt extremely distressed. That's all money. Yeah. It's our joint property as husband and wife. Ting Man was very confident that he could restore the Zhong Corporation to its former glory. Zhi King is my lucky star. With you by my side, it won't take long. He looked very satisfied. I gritted my teeth and said, your lucky star's waist still hurts now. I couldn't help but add insult to injury to Wu. He hated me deeply. The wound on his face hadn't healed yet. Every time he saw me, he felt that the wound hurt terribly. I told him everything that happened in the John Corporation and sighed. Scheming so much is really despicable. And it ended up costing that idiot his life. He was furious but had no way out. He just shouted that he wouldn't let me go. Not even as a ghost. I looked at him coldly as he lost his composure and curled my lips, saying, stop daydreaming. We won't meet. Just go straight to hell. Soon, let out a low sigh. The court session began. In order to save himself, Ziyu turned into a whistleblower. Wu never expected that his own child would stab him in the back. In court, he was in great pain and his heart was filled with despair. It must not be a pleasant feeling to lose everything and be betrayed by the people he loved the most. Later, Wu was sentenced to death, and Ziyu was sent to prison. On the day Wu was executed, I accompanied Ting Man to the graves of Jiang's father and mother. He talked from early morning until evening. Finally, he said, Mom and Dad, I hope Zhi King and I will always be happy. At that moment, the wind blew and the trees rustled. It was as if someone was responding. Later, Ting Man held a once-in-a-lifetime wedding for me. Shu was very annoyed. You two are so bad. You ganged up on me and lied to me. Although she said that, lured by Ting Man's benefits, she still presented her shop's treasure a huge pink diamond. Ting Man personally designed the style of the diamond ring and named it Lucky Star. Zhi King. This time, we'll grow old together. This was the most touching love words I had ever heard. Okay. It's a deal. The master of ceremonies was even more excited than me and shouted, now, the groom can kiss the bride. After the wedding, Dad still resolutely went to Antarctica. He transferred all his property under his name to me as my dowry. Now, he felt quite relaxed. Your mother loved the Aurora the most. In the future, when I see her, I can proudly tell her that Zhi King is living a good life and has found someone she truly loves. And I, as she wished, have served the country and dedicated my whole life to scientific research. I thought, he actually still loved me, right? Otherwise, he wouldn't have paid so much attention to my whereabouts. When he saw me rushing out in a hurry, he would follow me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have instinctively thrown himself on me to block the bullet. Before Dad left, I gave him a big hug. Just a moment ago, he had held me in his arms and begged me not to die with all his might. Joan, right? Dad said with tears in his eyes and stroked my head for the first time in his life. Okay. Dad will definitely come back then. After Dad's figure was out of sight, Ting Man asked, when did you get pregnant? He could always see through my lies at a glance. It's really boring. I played tricks. I will get pregnant eventually. Ting Man bit my ear. Okay. Then I'll try even harder. The end.